alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you for the kind invitation, and the occasion is a very important occasion for us who are followers of Ahlul Bayt, and in particular, we are the followers of the Imam of our time. This is the Shahadat Majlis for the father of our Imam, the heir of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi at his time, Imam Hasan Askari alayhi salatu wassalam. Before I begin, just a quick check. This is my first time using GoToMeeting for a majlis. So is my video and microphone, is everything working properly?
It's perfect, brother.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah. So we will begin with salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillah. Now, those of you who would like to turn on your camera, I don't know if you have a policy, but from my end, I would like to, encourage us to have as close a feeling to a real program as is possible. Because of the health concerns, we do need to do things virtually. This has opened up many doors, but our aim and our goal is to come together, and coming together, if possible, in person, and if not possible, as close as we can. That is something that helps us create a community of remembrance of Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salatu wassalam. So if you can, any of you would like to turn on your video, or if you have a picture of yourself or your family, then that would be very nice. And of course, those of you who might not have that set up, that's fine as well. Jazakumullah. Let's begin with Surah Al-Fatiha for all of the marhumeen of your families, our community, all of those who have served the cause of Islam and served the cause of Ahlul Bayt, ulama, shuhada, those who have devoted their lives and volunteered in building the institutions that all of us learn from and benefit from, for their well-being, for their forgiveness, for their high rank in the hereafter. Let us recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. بارئ الخلائق أجمعين. فاطر السماوات والأرضين. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
وعلى أهل بيته الأطيبين الأطهرين الهداة المهديين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، فقد قال الله عز وجل في القرآن المجيد: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هو الذي يرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى
محمد.
Dear brothers and sisters, once again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We are gathered together in this forum to remember the Imam who was the father of the Imam of our era, and the Imam who most directly prepared the Shia and prepared us for the life of ghaibat, of the absence and the occultation of the Imam. So today I will begin by looking at a few ahadith from Imam al-Hasan al-Askari alayhi salatu wasalam to honor our Imam and to remember the teachings that he gave us But then I want to spend the majority of our time talking about this preparation for the ghaibah. Because in the time of every Imam, there was a particular need which that Imam addressed. In the time of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wassalam, many people, they were new to Islam. The majority of Arabs, they had just entered into Islam within the last few years of Prophet Muhammad's life. When we say that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam preached Islam for 23 years before he passed away, we shouldn't get that impression that most of the Muslims were with the Prophet for 23 years. Most of the Muslims, even the Muhajirin, they joined somewhere after the beginning of the Prophet's mission, maybe 5 years, maybe 7 years, maybe 10 years after the Prophet started preaching. And those who joined in Medina, maximum, they were there for 10 years. Most of them joined after the Prophet's mission was in Medina. Some of the Ansar did not become Muslim right away. They were undecided, or they were among the Munafiqeen, and later on they became sincere. Many people from the surrounding tribes, they joined after Khaybar, after the conquest of Mecca, or in the last year of the Prophet's life, when the Prophet ﷺ sent delegates to the different tribes. So in Imam Ali's time, really it was still a continuation of the job of the Prophet, which was the religion had been completed, but the religion had not yet reached even many of those people who were Muslim and became Muslim in the time of the Prophet. Because imagine somebody lives 30, 40, 50 years of their life as a polytheist, or even as a Christian or a Jew. They have a certain cultural expectation, a certain religious expectation, and now they become Muslim. So they don't have any real idea of how they should treat their wife, how they should treat their parents, how they should treat their husband, how they should think of their ibadat. They didn't have this insight. So why did Imam Ali make those choices that he made? Why did he not fight the first caliphs to impose his imamate? Well, we have to understand what was the job of Imam Ali, what was the need of Islam. Because for Imam Ali, his life was to serve what Islam needed, not to get from Islam a benefit for himself or for his family. And the need of Islam was to establish those basic teachings for which the Prophet and Imam Ali ﷺ had given their lives. So Imam Hasan's time, Imam Hussain's time, Imam Zainul Abidin's time, in every Imam's time there was a social need, a religious need, a political need, and the Imam addressed that need in the best possible way. So what was the need in the time of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari alayhi salatu wasalam? The need was for us to understand, what does it mean for our Imam not to be accessible? And we have to have this adab. Just like our parents. When my parents are alive, I have an obligation to them. If my parents enter into old age, I have a different obligation for them. The Quran says, do not say uff, وَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا uff. Don't say uff to your parents when they're old. Why does the Quran not tell us, don't say uff to your parents when they are young? We can't say uff to our parents, meaning we can't express anger to our parents when they're old or when they're young. But why does the Quran give us this message when our parents are old? Because when people become old, sometimes they have physical pain, sometimes they have soreness in their body, they have other pains they cannot express, or they're not able to get full treatment for. Sometimes they have worries or regrets in their life or insecurities. Sometimes they have hardships which maybe they cannot express, or they can't take care of their affairs on their own. Sometimes they might be more irritable and they're more dependent on their children, which is very difficult because the parents raised the children. So it's very difficult emotionally for them to be dependent on their children. And maybe I say something very innocently, I'm sorry, I'm busy. I can't help you right now, to my parent. But because they're vulnerable, because they're dependent on me, that innocent response, it hurts their feelings more than if I were talking to somebody who's my own age. So I have to be more sensitive. The obligation is there when my parents are young or when my parents are old. But it becomes more important when my parents are old. لا تقل لهما أف. When they're young, it's bad. But if I say something, then my parents, they still are young, they have their health, they have their own independent income maybe. I'm speaking in the general terms. Every individual family has different circumstances, but they're more able to take care of their affairs. Maybe they're emotionally and psychologically more independent. They can ask somebody else, but as they become older, they might become more irritable, they might become more dependent on me. I have to be different than I was when I was younger. And this is not our topic, so I won't give more detail, but just one more example in the same topic of our parents. Then there is another obligation when my parents leave this world, if I am still alive. So this وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, it doesn't come to an end that if my parents are alive, I have to be kind to them. But now when they're no longer alive, then they have their own account with Allah. If they're not alive, their soul is still there. And one of the best gifts that I can give to my parents is not anything I can do for them in their life. But if they are no longer alive, I do a good deed and I include them in the intention. Because while they were alive, they could do the Quran, this beautiful program of the Quran circle. If anybody joins that, every day make the intention that this is for your parents, if they're alive or if they're not alive. Grandparents, your ancestors, and go back as far as your heart allows you to go back. There's no restriction from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The more people you include in your intention, then the more your own heart becomes open to God's grace and spirituality and thawab and reward. So you have one obligation when your parents are young. You have a different obligation when your parents are old. And then you have a different obligation when your parents are no longer alive. And if we wanted to give more detail, we could give more examples. But the point I want to make is that sometimes we forget that there are these differences. And I, as a child, I used to treat my parents one way. I used to talk my parents in one way when I was a kid and they were taking care of me. And then when the circumstances change, I don't realize that now there is a different responsibility I have, a different relationship I need to develop. And sometimes we don't realize what our responsibility is when our parents are no longer alive. So I want to use this as an example. When our Imam is no longer in our midst, how should I treat my responsibility to Ahlul Bayt and the wilayat of Ahlul Bayt? How should I treat my fellow community members? How should I treat my family? How should I treat myself and my own spirituality? These are things that change. Our Imam was present. Anybody had a question, even if they lived far away in Khurasan, they could send a message with somebody who was going for Hajj, somebody who was going for Umrah, even sometimes people who were going for trade caravans. They could say, when you go to Medina, ask Imam Ja'far Sadiq this question. I have a question. Or they could go, if you lived in Balkh, if you lived in Mashhad, if you lived in it was called Tus in that time, if you lived in Ray, if you lived in Qom, you could say that, well, there are fuqaha in my own region, in my own city. They have directly studied with Ahlul Bayt. They have first-hand knowledge from Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salam, from Imam Ali Rida alayhi salatu wasalam. I can ask, and I can get a very decisive and a very clear answer. When the Imam is not there, we don't have that luxury. So what does that mean? How should I learn about my religion and how should I think about my spirituality? Everything, it changes in maybe a small way, but a very important way. And this is what Imam Askari's time was to prepare the Shia for. So one of the important things we need to do during the remembrance of our 11th Imam is to begin to understand that just as the Imam prepared his followers for the ghaibah during his lifetime, we also need to learn how to prepare ourselves to be a good believer and a mu'min during the ghaibah of our Imam. And if I think that I am living in the time of Imam Ali or Imam Hasan or Imam Hussein or Imam Zainul Abidin, then of course I learn the lessons from their example. But I should also remember that I have a special and a unique obligation due to the period of ghaibah. So the first hadith that I would like to look, and both of these two hadith from Imam Hasan Askari alayhi salam, they are a hadith that refer to the relationship with our fellow believers. And one of those things that is very important is that when your Imam is not present amongst you, then you have to have a much stronger relationship with your community, with your believers. Sometimes, when my father is alive, my mother is alive, if I don't have that direct contact with my brothers and sisters, it's not a big deal. Because my mother or my father, they are a connector. My mother will call me, my mother will call my sister, she'll keep us up to date. So the family connection stays through the parent. Now, I still have to do Silatul Rahim, and I have to try to keep a connection with my sister or my brother. But if I'm a little bit weak, then somebody is taking up that role within the family. The connection can still continue. But in many families, what happens when the mother is no longer alive or is older and not able to fulfill that role, then the connection between two brothers when they live in different cities, the connection between two sisters or a brother and a sister when they live in a different city or they are busy, that connection gets weaker. So we have to maintain those relationships with our brothers and sisters, even more importantly than before, because now the head of our madhab, the leader and the wali of our Muslim community is not there. When Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salam is alive, he is keeping his followers connected. Even if they are not fully mature, even if they are not fully taking care of their responsibility, then the Imam is present. And that is barakah. That gives a great favor to all of the followers. But now when the Imam is not physically present, I have to make sure that my connection to you is very strong. You have to make sure that your connection to me is very strong. That's the only way we can keep an ummah. And we can keep a relationship with each other, and we can keep alive the religion and the values and the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wasalam. Otherwise, gradually, even one family, if they become isolated, just one family now, alhamdulillah, you have a very good group, and Urdu, Farsi, English recitation. This is exactly what Ahlul Bayt need and want from us, to create a community where we are united. I might not like Persian food, or I might not like spicy food, but I'm united with my fellow believers. Why? Because of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam. But if one person leaves, and there is something I can do to prevent their leaving, then this is a loss now for the strength of our community. So we have to do everything in our power to keep those connections, to help each other. When there is so much animosity against Islam, so much animosity against Muslims, to keep those connections. So the hadith of Imam Hasan al-Askari, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Jazakumullah. The first one is a hadith in which our Imam says, خَصْلَتَانِ لَيْسَ فَوْقَهُمَا شَيْءٍ. There are two attributes of a believer. Above these two attributes, there is nothing. These are the two most valuable and greatest attributes that a believer can have. خَصْلَتَانِ لَيْسَ فَوْقَهُمَا شَيْءٍ. And if you want to do two things, devote your life to two things, then develop these two attributes above everything else. And both of these, alhamdulillah, are within our access. If I want to become an expert calligrapher or Quran reciter or any hobby or talent or sport, then it might be difficult. It might take a long time. Some of these difficult, challenging goals. It might take me months or years to perfect and to develop my talent. With these two attributes, Imam Hasan Askari is telling us, if I want to make that decision, right from tonight, I can start performing this obligation. And alhamdulillah, this is a gift from Ahlul Bayt, that they make a very high and a very sublime destination accessible for us. As the hadith of Imam Baqir says, we don't have to go to the right and the left and, trying to find enlightenment with this philosophy or that school of thought or this practice or that practice. We have the straight path, the shortcut, the direct path, which is taught by Ahlul Bayt. So a very sublime goal, the greatest human character, the Makarim al-Akhlaq. And Imam Hasan Askari says, خَصْلَتَانِ لَيْسَ فَوْقَهُمَا شَيْءٍ. These two things. I can develop this, inshallah, right from tonight. Al-Imanu billah. First, put your trust in Allah. And what is Al-Imanu billah? It means that I know Allah is my creator. Allah is my sustainer. I only have to obey Allah. I don't have to obey anybody except Allah. If I listen to my family, if I listen to my parents, if I compromise with my community members, I'm not doing a favor to my community. I'm not doing a favor to my family because I'm not obeying them. I'm obeying Allah. So let's say, for example, I make a big compromise for the sake of a family member. Then I can never say that, remember that time I did you a favor? Why? Because Iman billah means that only Allah is worthy of my focus and my attention. If I give you a loan, if I spend a weekend helping you pack for a move, if I refer you for a job and I help you get established as a career, whatever it might be, biggest favor to the smallest favor. If I believe Allah is my Lord, if I have Iman billah, then I'll never remind you of it. لا تبطلوا صدقاتكم بالمن والأذى. Why? Because I never did it as a favor to you. I did it as gratitude and obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there is only one God who is our creator, there is only one God who benefits us, and there is only one God whom we owe our obedience and our thanks to, and there is only one relationship that we have to worry about, and that is our relationship to Allah. Every other relationship is through Allah and not independent. And so much peace comes to our mind and our heart and our soul when I know I'm not responsible for my children's success or failure or happiness. I'm not responsible for my spouse or my parents' success or failure or happiness. I am responsible to do whatever I can to honor that relationship, to honor the gift that Allah has given me, to honor the responsibility that Allah has given to me. I do my best for the sake of Allah. If that person is grateful, alhamdulillah. If that person is not grateful, Allah sees my intention. I don't have any sadness or regret or depression. This is Iman. When my life is about Allah, then أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبِ. I have itma'inan of my heart. I have tranquility and ease in my heart because that one relationship is the only one that I am concerned about. And that relationship is one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will manage between himself and me. So it's something that is a big source of strength. So the Imam says, خَصْلَتَانِ لَيْسَ فَوْقَهُمَا شَيْءٍ. The first is al-imanu billah, with all of the levels of Iman. And the second one is وَنَفْعُ الْإِخْوَانِ. The second thing is always try to be a help to your fellow believers. So one of our goals is that we have to keep our community. So whenever I come to the center, I'm not looking to get a benefit. Whenever I meet a fellow believer, I'm not looking to get a benefit. I've sometimes seen somebody in the community opens a new business and I find out that there is a friend of mine who buys cars at auction and they sell cars. And so I say, good, now I can save money on my car. The second khaslat is وَنَفْعُ الْإِخْوَانِ. I should say this brother of mine or sister, they have started this new daycare, they've started this new business, they've started this new restaurant. Let me go and pay full price. Let me go and say, I'm going to pay extra. I'm going to give you a tip. MashaAllah, may Allah give you barakah in this business. And then they, of course, they also are a mu'min. They also want to do naf'al ikhwan. So they should also come and say, no, I'm going to charge you less. My goal is not to earn a profit from my family and from my community. This is a gift that you have given barakah, but it could come from both sides. Sometimes one side or the other, we are looking to receive the benefit. Make it a habit that whenever I meet a fellow believer, in the masjid, at home, at work, naf'ul ikhwan. What can I do to help them? Give them information if there is a promotion at a bank they can benefit from, if there is a job opening that they might be able to benefit from, if there is some help they can use in their personal life, whatever it might be. But naf'ul ikhwan. If the center needs volunteers to teach Sunday school, to help tutor children, this is also naf'ul ikhwan. When you serve your community, you're serving all of your brothers and sisters from now until the future, so long as that benefit remains. What are the three attributes Imam Hasan Askari teaches us? This is the values of Imam Hasan Askari, and we honor our Imam by developing these attributes. Al-Imanu Billah. I have faith in Allah. I'm not looking for a solution to my life's problems through an election, through a promotion, through retirement. My iman, my faith, my hope, my trust, my desire for protection and reward, all of it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the second thing is وَنَفْعُ الْإِخْوَانِ. Whenever I am among my community members, what can I do to benefit them? So that's one hadith of our Imam. Second hadith of Imam Al-Hasan Al-Askari alayhi salatu wassalam is خَيْرُ إِخْوَانِكَ مَنْ نَسِيَ ذَنْبَكَ وَذَكَرَ إِحْسَانَكَ إِلَيْهِ. Out of all of the brothers, therefore our sisters, of all of the sisters that you have, all of your fellow believers, the best of them are those who forgets your mistakes and remembers when you did ihsan. So I should remember my mistakes so I don't repeat them and forget my ihsan. But when it comes to other people, I should forget their mistakes and I should remember their ihsan. And what does this create? It creates an economy of fadl, of virtue. Have all of you heard of a vicious cycle? A vicious cycle is when I say something bad, I do something bad, and then that has a bad effect on somebody else. They come back, maybe provoke me or somebody else, and then it becomes a cycle of violence, of mistrust, of suffering, of evil. And there's many times in our life when we are part of a vicious cycle or we create a vicious cycle. But there is a such thing as a virtuous cycle. And the virtuous cycle is that we have a community of believers, and somebody might make a mistake, somebody might say something rude, somebody might gossip. But what I do is when somebody makes a mistake, I forget it. When they do a good deed, I amplify it. So what have I done? I've put a wall, ended that vicious cycle, and tried to create a virtuous cycle in exchange. And inshallah, that grows. Just like the vicious cycle can snowball and end a relationship, a virtuous cycle can grow and create a community and save a community. So these are two of the teachings from our 11th Imam, Al-Imam Al-Hasan Al-Askari alayhi salatu wassalam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
May Allah allow us to be true to the message of our Imam, inshallah. The second topic that I wanted to discuss briefly is this preparation for the ghaiba of our Imam. When our Imam is present, we have access to the teachings of the Imam, either directly or indirectly through their students. When our Imam is absent, then there is a process of religious learning. We go to our ulama and our experts, fuqaha, who have studied Islam, and we learn from them. And even among ulama, just because I have a turban doesn't mean I'm any different from the rest of you. I learn from those who are more learned than I am. You learn from those who are more learned than you are. So we have a process of learning, but none of those people that we study from, even the highest marja' al-taqlid, none of them have perfect knowledge because they are not ma'asum. Their teachers were also not ma'asum. They are doing their best to study the teachings of Ahlul Bayt and to explain the principles and the values of Ahlul Bayt according to the needs of our time. It is an effort, but we do not have that direct connection to a ma'asum. So, although we will always have our own expectations, we will always have our own beliefs, maybe even strong beliefs, we have to have more humility and respect for other members of our community. Because when your Imam is not there, then the first thing that you need is to be humble. Just like, for example, if I am working in a corporation and I just get promoted to a new department, but I've only been working in this new department for a week, and there is a supervisor who's had experience for years. So when the supervisor is there, I can be a little bit more confident. But when the supervisor is not there to explain things to me, to correct my mistakes, to show me how to properly conduct my role, what do I need to do? The very first thing I need is to be more humble. Maybe certain decisions, I won't make those decisions until the supervisor comes back. Maybe certain decisions, I will just make them for a short term, but I won't allocate any budgets for a long time because I'm still learning. Maybe some decisions, I'll refer them to somebody else. So there is a difference that needs to come. And preparation for ghaiba, the most important thing that we need in order to prepare for the ghaiba of our Imam and how I need to be with my Imam when the Imam is not there is humility. If I have learned from majalis and studied Islam for 50 years, and now my beard is white, I think in the video I can see my beard is black, but if you were to see me in person, it's a lot more white than it looks. But even if my beard has become white, my hair has become white, I say I spent a whole lifetime with the studying of Islam. Still, I should consider myself a beginner, a student. Even if the world calls me allama, if the world thinks that I am an alim, a scholar, I should know in my heart that I am a student and a beginner. And I need to have that humility. This humility is what will allow me to keep my connection to the Imam. I will always feel that the supervisor is not there. That first week on your job, when your mentor, when your supervisor is not there,
I'm about to make a
even
quick
for a
espresso on
moment,
Elizabeth.
you won't feel
At the moment,
comfortable.
I don't have the
Because you're
steam
new.
boiler on, as you can
So
see
you'll be
by the little
looking,
E.
maybe to your
I'm gonna
coworker,
use the
maybe
number
to
2
somebody in a
button
different
for a
department.
slightly
Maybe you'll try to
long blue
call that
phase
supervisor on the phone.
pre-infusion.
You'll feel in your heart that something is missing.
You can see the
But
needle
how many
starting
times
to
in
drop
our
away.
life we
You
just
should
live
get some
our
drips at
lives,
the
we make
spouts.
decisions, we talk about Islam, we talk about,
There it comes.
what should the community do, what should I do, what should our friends do, what should society do, and we never feel that not our supervisor but our Imam
It's a
is
very
absent.
quiet
This
machine.
opinion that I'm
That's
expressing, this
something I
belief that I
particularly
have,
like about it.
this is all superficial knowledge. This is all
There's 31 grams.
just conjecture and attempts at knowledge, but it is not true knowledge. if I feel in my heart the vacuum, the faragh or the khala, that my Imam is not there for me to ask a question. Imam is alive, the Imam is conducting his affairs according to the command of Allah, but he's not there and accessible for me. So the first preparation for the ghaiba of the Imam is humility, tawadu. Tawadu in ilm, about my knowledge, tawadu in my akhlaq and my relationship with my fellow believers, tawadu in all of my affairs. I need to be much, much more careful, much more aware of my vulnerability. The second attribute that we need to prepare is we need to develop a network among ourselves to stay connected. And inshallah, very soon, we will be able to meet in person again. Don't think that, you know what, these virtual programs were wonderful and it's so much more efficient. I don't have to drive, I don't have to get ready, I don't have to get stuck in traffic. I don't know how bad traffic is in your area, but sometimes some people think that these programs are efficient and it's better, let's just keep doing it virtually. We need to maintain our connections and keep the virtual program. Some people might live far away, some people might be elderly, maybe it's difficult for them to come, but have an in-person program as well. And those of you who are able, come to the in-person program. Leave the virtual for those who really are not able to make it. But if you have to take a little bit of time away from sleep, if you have to take away a little bit of time from relaxation, and you are able to attend, even if it's difficult, then just seeing each other in person. When it's safe and healthy, doing musafaha, shaking each other's hands, sharing our time with each other. Those connections are important. So first was tawadu. Second thing is keeping our connections now virtually. When it's possible, then don't take the easy way out or the efficient way out or the convenient way out or the cheaper way out, but keep that in-person salat, dua, and the ijtima' as much as it's possible, while of course accommodating those who might not be able to make it. And the third and the final attribute that I want to mention is only put our hope in Allah. Sometimes it's very common that people think, you know, my problem is that I'm renting a house, and if I had my own house, then I would be better off. If I could just get a little bit of a better job, then I would be good. If, you know, my spouse was a little bit more understanding, then things would be good. If I didn't have this health problem, then things would be good. Our hope, our dreams are worldly dreams. What does Allah say in Surah Al-Hajj? الَّذِينَ إِن مَّكَّنَّاهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. That if Allah gives them money, if Allah gives them political influence, if Allah gives the believers authority and power, when I get that higher income, what is the first goal I have? Is it a personal goal? Or is it for Allah? Do I want to help my family for the sake of Allah? Or do I want to help myself for my personal reasons? أقاموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة وأمروا بالمعروف ونهوا عن المنكر ولله عاقبة الأمور. Those believers are the ones who their goal is for Allah. Only let's put our hope in Allah, not who's going to win the election, not what I can accomplish for myself. أكثروا من الدعاء بتعجيل الفرج. Make frequent dua for Allah to fulfill His promise to Ahlul Bayt. فَإِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ فَرَجَكُمْ. Because our deliverance, our peace of mind our problems will be solved with the faraj of Ali Muhammad. So this is the third thing. Tawadu, our relationships with each other, and our hope only in Allah. Inshallah, these are the attributes that will help us be ready to be believers, to keep our faith and strengthen our faith in the period of the ghaibah of our Imam. May Allah hasten his reappearance and bring happiness to Imam Hasan Askari and happiness to all of the members of our family of the Prophet and all of the believers through the end of oppression and injustice and the deliverance of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Imam Hasan al-Askari was only Imam for 6 years. He became Imam after the death of his father, Imam Ali al-Naqi al-Hadi alayhi salam, in the year 254 Hijri. And he himself was martyred in the year 260 Hijri. And that brief period of the 6 years of Imamat was during the time in which, when the Imam was under house arrest, when the Imam was only with difficulty able to meet a small number of followers and his students, the Imam prepared his followers to continue teaching on the path of Ahlul Bayt, even when their Imam would no longer be around, until a time in the year 260 after Hijrah, the Imam of our time, Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Askari alayhi salam, was only a young boy of 5 years of old when Imam Hasan al-Askari was poisoned. According to some narrations, it was by al-Mu'tamid al-Abbasi, the Caliph. He caused the Imam to be poisoned, and as that poison began to take effect in the body of the Imam became weak. The color of the face of the Imam changed. He became weak, and he called his son, the Imam of our time, in front of him. And even though Imam Mahdi was at that time a very young child, but he was chosen by Allah to be the Imam, he knew what Imam Hasan Askari had called him for, and Imam Hasan al-Askari would have made the wasiyah to the Imam of our time. And I don't know what words would have been exchanged. Maybe Imam Hasan al-Askari would say that, "Oh my son, we are far away from Medina, from the home of our Prophet, the home of our grandmother, Lady Fatima. If only we were in Medina, then I would ask you to bury me in the presence and in the vicinity of the Imams from my ancestors. But we are far away from our homeland, and I am leaving you now to be the Imam in this land where you are surrounded by the enemy." And even in the family, there are those people who did not want Imam Mahdi to become well known and for the people to follow him. And maybe Imam Mahdi would have said that, "Oh Father, as our Imams said before, that this tragedy would be impossible for me to bear if I did not remember before us the example of the loss of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the greatest tragedy to befall humanity, where Lady Fatima sallallahu alaiha, even when she was in Medina, was not able to mourn. And when the people of Medina came to Imam Ali just a few days after the Prophet had died, they said that, "Oh Ali, your wife Fatima Zahra cries over the death of her father, and her pain and her tears, it gives us discomfort to think how much she is grieved and how sad she is. Can you tell her not to grieve in this way in Medina?" And so Imam Ali prepared a special home of mourning, the first Husayniyah, what I would say, the first place to shed tears for Ahlul Bayt, and the musibah of Ahlul Bayt was prepared by Imam Ali in Medina for Lady Fatima, and that became known as Baytul Ahzan in the direction of Baqi'. And it is said that Lady Fatima would go every single day to Baytul Ahzan with the hand of Imam Hasan alayhi salam as a young boy, and she would go to that place and she would shed her tears and say, "Oh my father Rasulullah, you don't know what your ummah has done to me and to your successor Ali ibn Abi Talib, and how they have taken away the rights of Ahlul Bayt, and by doing so they have caused irreparable harm to the interests of the Muslim ummah." And of course, if Imam Mahdi alayhi salam at the deathbed of his father remembered the sufferings of his ancestors, then we know from the Sunnah of Imam Mahdi, and as is narrated in Ziyaratul Nahiyah, that he would remember the musibah of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam. It is narrated from our Imam that he says, "When I think of Karbala, I begin to shed tears. But when I think of the suffering of Imam Hussein, then I will cry blood rather than tears at how much Imam Hussein suffered at the hands of the enemy." Imagine one man, the only surviving grandson of Rasulullah, the one whom Prophet Muhammad loved so much, that when Imam Hasan would come into the masjid when the Imam was giving a sermon, the Prophet would stop his sermon in order to take Imam Hussein and his brother Imam Hasan into his own arms. That Hussein, the beloved grandson of the Prophet, now is surrounded by 30,000 enemies, and the Imam, out of his mercy, is still calling them with blood gushing from the wounds in his body, that "I call on you to repent and leave the party of Yazid and come to the path of guidance and the path of Allah." And those people responded to the call of Imam Hussein, not with gratitude, but by throwing their spears and their arrows and their weapons in the direction of the Imam, until our Imam was martyred. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.